ask all the workshop facilitators, not the workshop leaders, but the facilitators. Just say facilitators, we need all the facilitators.
Do you want to say?
Sure, and then you translate. Okay.
For translation, no, there will be the translators.
Oh, they will do it, right?
Yes.
Okay.
If you speak slowly.
And then
when the translators are available.
Will you remind them at the end of the session? So
Under the all is better before the session.
Okay, I'll do it before the session.
Because after the session, people is
They're leaving,
very
right?
tired.
So before is thank you.
Are you ready? Ruth, what happened? You too? All is okay.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, everybody. Please, everybody, this is important. Please listen. Please, if you left something in this room and you can't find it, if you left something in this room yesterday or the day before and you can't find it, go to the portineria, go to the little window just before. Check that you have taken your bag and your telephone and your money and your iPad and everything, because a lot of you have lost something. So please go to the portineria and they will try to find it. Thank you.
If somebody has lost, if somebody knows that someone lost something, please, you know where to go now, to the portineria. Please make sure that you take all your belongings.
Good afternoon. Could you raise your hand if you're a facilitator? Are there facilitators here? Okay, I think there are more than that who are probably not here yet. But I'd like to ask all of the facilitators to please come up here, over here, and meet with me at the end of the afternoon session. Tomorrow morning, all of the workshop groups that met today will meet back in the same room you met in today. And so at 8:30 tomorrow morning, all of you, so this, now that I have the microphone, all of you need to return to your workshop groups of today, because we're beginning prayer in our workshop groups. We're beginning prayer in our workshop groups, and the facilitators will be opening up a period of reflection. Our schedule is also moved up so that we'll begin at 8:30 and your coffee break will be at 9:30, and we want to all be back in here and ready to begin together, continuing our prayer of closing at 10 o'clock. That schedule will be out on the boards. But the key thing is, go to your workshop groups tomorrow morning, and facilitators, please meet with me here at the end of this afternoon session, just for a few minutes. Thank you very much.
Vamos a continuar. Por Dios.
Let us continue. Oh my God. A martyr of the Congress. We are still waiting for a lot of people. There is a very important announcement, because it has economic consequences for the names of the people that I'll say. If these people whose names I'm going to say, if they listen to their name, please pay attention, because they have left their IDs with the headphones in the hall, but you have not returned the headphones. If you do not return the headphone, if you forget, if you take them with you, you will have a fine of 250 euros, and there is no need for that.
Yung Kim, Popara Roberta Ann, Flyan Catherine Carmen, Youssef Salem Al Yaqub, Alan Rose, Anne, Dominican fathers who left 1 shell fuel card. No se preocupen que como
Don't worry that we will name them again at the end of the session at least. But if you have heard your name, please pay attention to this.
estamos esperando a que
We are waiting for the concert to finish so we can start the afternoon session.
Est-ce qu'on a déjà fait des vidéos? Oui, les vidéos de la Pologne. Mais il y a un autre. Je vais demander de faire.
Excuse me, just a small note. You will notice that there are some videos. There are some videos that are being played, short videos. There was a sort of a contest on short videos to celebrate the 800th anniversary of the order. And these are what the jury judged to be some of the better videos. So as you'll see today and tomorrow, some short videos that were sent in celebration of the Jubilee. You can see them here, but they will also be available on the website of the order. So enjoy them here, but also when you get back, you can download them and see them at home.
Vamos a
Let us begin. Good afternoon.
Anel, alguien olvidó el rosario en su concierto. ¿Puedo dar un aviso?
Sí, comienza.
Prior provincials who are present, priors provincials who are present,
The provincial fathers who are here, I need one moment with you here, please.
I need a moment with all the prior provincials. I would like a minute with you here.
Ahora. Continuamos con los...
Some more announcement. Let us accelerate our work at this point. Let us get back to work.
Sí que hay provinciales. Las personas
People who have not returned their headphones since a day or two, please. Please do not take the headphones with you. If you lose any type of headphone, those people who lose the headphones will have a fine of 250 euros. This is a motivation not to lose your headphones. I would like to take advantage of this moment to say, in order to announce that the convent of the Priory of St. Catherine in Barcelona had presented the candidacy of one of our brothers, of Jean-Jacques Perrenet, the brother who spoke to us yesterday, for a very important prize that the community of Catalonia gives as in interreligious dialogues, and we have received today that Jean-Jacques Perrenet is the awardee to Jean-Jacques Perrenet, who today is his birthday. So this has been a birthday present to Jean-Jacques. The community of Barcelona wanted to continue with the tradition of our priory, of the Priory of San Raymond of Peñafort, to present as an homage to all our brothers and sisters of the Far East, all of them who are been working in the interreligious dialogue, and the person of Jean-Jacques, all of them have been awarded, and it's a great way to celebrate our preaching in the interreligious dialogue. So congratulations to all of you. I'm going to continue to introduce to you now the panelists, the moderator, Leobardo Almazan. He is a Dominican friar of the San Martin de Porres province in the U.S. He has been a political counselor, professor, and a pastor. And he teaches right now at Aquinas Institute of Theology in St. Louis, Missouri. He has been a delegate to the United Nations, and he is the prior of the Priory in San Luis, which is the House of Studies of the San Martin de Porres Province and San Albert of Great Province in the United States. Welcome, Leobardo.
Today we welcome the Master of the Order, our brother Bruno Cadore, a medical doctor, specialist in biotechnologies for medical purposes, ordained priest in He went to Haiti and pursued his formation in Dominican life. He was a doctorate in theology, I think he said. He's directed the medical center of the Catholic Institute in Lille, a member of the International Congress on AIDS in France. Brother Bruno was Prior Provincial of France when he was elected, and then he was elected as the successor of Saint Dominic.
Completa la mesa.
Our third panelist, coming from the land of the challenging land of from Iraq, our Dominican sister, Luma Kuder.
A PhD from University of Notre Dame, USA, in biblical studies. She returned to Iraq to live and work in 2012. In 2014, she was among thousands of Christians who were forced to flee their Christian towns, want to advance and control of Islamic State in Nineveh, Iraq. Since then, she has been working with her community of Dominican sisters to help the displaced people in Kurdistan, Iraq. Welcome, sister. From Africa, Nigeria, Sister Faustina Jimoh, Dominican Sister of St. Catherine of Siena in Kusan, Nigeria. Has a bachelor's degree in divinity and master's degree in Catholic applied theology through the pathway of faith and culture. Served her congregation as prioress general from 8 years. Presently serving on the Dominican Sisters International Council as coordinator for Africa. Has been involved in pastoral ministry at the grassroots for 25 years. Currently living and working in Jos, in northeastern parts of Nigeria, as director of the Female Catechist Formation Center in the Archdiocese of Jos. Welcome, Sister Faustina.
Muy buenas tardes.
Good afternoon. Leo in Spanish. First of all, we give our welcome to our brothers and sisters who are listening to us through mass media, Twitter, YouTube, or Facebook. I ask all brothers and sisters here in Rome that we give a hand to all those brothers and sisters who are following us through the mass media. I will remember you to those who are following us online. In order to participate in this Congress is very important, and the way that you can participate is by sending us your questions so the panel members could answer them at the end of their presentations. We have arrived to the last panel of this our Congress for the mission of the Order of Preachers. And it's important for all of us to remember the way that we have taken. The first day, we explored what it means to embrace humanity, to face humanity, so that a humanity that is needed of gospel, and how we as preachers have to announce the gospel of humanity. The second day, we were invited to reflect about the encounter that begins a living preaching, a preaching that is alive, and therefore we have been invited to preach an encounter, to do a preaching of encounter. And this third day, we are recalled that we are called to a service that responds to a mission. To say we have been remembered that our mission is of service, to serve in love. In order to lighten this work on this mission to serve in love, we have the Master of the Order, Brother Bruno Canore, who will talk to us about the service as a response to our obedience. Then we will listen to our sister Bruda Kunder from Iraq, and she will talk about serving as we walk with those who have lost their home, with those who suffer, and with those who are asking us, who require out of us not only a feeling of solidarity but concrete actions. With the ones we could also walk with our brothers and sisters who suffer. And finally, our sister Faustina from Nigeria, who will talk to us about serving in the Dominican way as a message of salvation from a practical point of view. Therefore, my dear brothers and sisters, I invite you to open your minds so we can reflect together in what it means to serve as members of the Dominican family.
En français, merci.
In French, thank you. You'll allow me, please excuse me, the interpreters will excuse me, I don't have a text, so I will try to speak slowly and not too long, so I don't say too much. We're talking about service, and I would like to suggest that we consider an objective link, direct link, between the theme of today, which was being sent, and I suggest this by reminding us of the terms in which each brother of the Friars, Order of Friars Preachers, has received at least once, I hope more than once, a letter from his provincial. A letter which says, considering the needs, the apostolic needs of our province, and the service which you can accomplish in the name of Christ, in virtue of obedience and repealing your previous assignation, I assign you to such and such a convent. The link, then, is one between obedience as the Book of Constitutions of the Brothers of the Friars Preachers says, constitutes the unity of the order, in continuity with the St. Dominic's intuition, who asked his brothers, we hear, to promise to him, to promise a life in community, a life of obedience. You'll see projected on the screen 5 reproductions, which seem to me to be able to accompany us in this reflection on service in obedience. Four of them show from the top to bottom the passage from Christ, the Christ in Ozma, a surprising and wonderful image of Dominic in showing mercy. I hope this picture we can include with Dominic as Mother of Mercy in its turn. But in this picture, here I can mention what I'll say a bit later, but here it seems to me that there are only the nuns under the mantle of St. Dominic. You don't see it. Okay, sorry, I'm sorry. You will see it later. So you can look, this is the vertical line, and the horizontal line has 2 pictures offered by our brother Julian from Mexico. From left, we have the face of Christ, and on the right, the face of St. Dominic. You'll notice that it's quite difficult to, at first glance, to remember who is on the left and who is on the right. And in the middle you see an ancient picture used in the province of France for vows at Christmas, which had been done by the brother Ghislain de Rouvre, I think, which shows the picture of humanity, a picture which comes to humanity, a face which comes to humanity, marked by the genealogy of God's history in this world. The service of the order, it seems to me, represented by this cross. It's about the heart which serves in the heart of human history. It's the revelation, the realization of God's history among humanity. And to do this, St. Dominic chose to look upon the face of Christ and to follow the example of the preaching Christ, which led him to build his order by leaning, putting his strength of preaching on that life given by Christ, while finding also a strength for preaching in giving mercy, the mercy which he had received from Christ. I would like to suggest that we bear in mind 5 criteria which would allow us to reflect on, not to define, but to reflect on the service in the preaching of the order. First, which I began to touch on when I talked about assignations. The first is to say that the service of the order does not consist in creating a list or a book or a library of things which we must do, words which we must say, teaching which we must develop. Obedience, which we're talking about, this obedience integrates us, inserts us into a common life, the common life which invites us to an obedience and a listening to a word. It's about, for us, it's about becoming sons and daughters of Dominic, members of the Order of Preachers, to become listeners of a word, listeners to a word. These hearers or listeners to the word know that they cannot hear this word alone. They listen to a conversation. They listen to a God whom we heard this morning, a God who hears the voice of the world and addresses that world. The Order's service is therefore less a list of things or words which one must do or say than an attitude of listening, which is not only a listening to another, which of course is welcome in humanity, but a listening into a conversation between of God with humanity, or God with others, a conversation of love, we could say. If it's true that preaching is always, in some way or another, a manifestation of this love. A little while ago with the brothers, we were asking, why is it important for the brothers to listen to one another mutually, preaching to one another? And it seemed to me that it was not important to listen to the brothers preaching just to hear what they wanted to say, even though sometimes we do come back to what the brothers have said in their preaching. But what is wonderful when we listen to a brother preaching is to see how, when he's preaching, he loves those to whom he is speaking, to the extent that he loves the one of whom he is speaking. Obedience as a listening, or rather, obedience as constitutive of a community of listening, a listening into a conversation. And perhaps it's this that we might truly call the holy preaching. The holy preaching, this preaching which is carried and followed by the mystery of which we're speaking, but which we cannot grasp, the mystery of grace which transforms the world. A second point of view or criteria to question us or to strengthen us in our service in the order, and to remind us constantly, and I imagine I don't have to do this at length, but to remind us constantly that while we speak about service in the order, we're speaking about a ministry of the word. This is what Brother Anisto Fernandez underlined, stressed in his introduction to the new constitutions. As you will see, when I was preparing for this afternoon, I looked at the constitutions of the brothers. I dived into them. He said, as he was referring to Vatican II, chapter 4 of Ephesians, in Vatican II, he emphasized that the evangelist found himself among all those in the church which is constituted by that preaching. The ministry of the word is a definition or designation which is interesting, because the brothers and sisters of the order are ministers or servants of the world, which means that they serve a word which itself is working, at work. Sometimes, or very often, we stop by asking ourselves about, we think about how we can build ourselves up in our words. But to be servant of the word, a minister of the word, is to be at the service of a word which itself is working, which itself is working, which itself, or operative, which itself, if you may permit me to say, knows better than us what it wants to say and what it wants to do. To be such ministers, servants, is to decide and desire to live as preachers in this world, to contemplate the work of that word in the world, to contemplate how it comes to write its history in the world, and to contemplate how, making itself present, it comes to change the face of the world into a transfigured face, into the image of this young boy, which is built up from the genealogy of the coming of the Son of God into his world. To be a servant or minister of the word is to be a servant of that. A servant of the conjunction of those two histories. And so we have to be, and this is my third point, we have to be at the service of the salvation of the world. We are preachers, sons and daughters of St. Dominic. We are preachers for the salvation of the world, in serving that salvation. That's the reason why I think it's always asked of us to not only to love the world, but to contemplate the world. To contemplate the world as it is worked on by the word, by a grace, by a spirit which bears it towards fullness. Thinking this afternoon, I was thinking again, and I think I was again of the insistence of Vatican II, the insistence it put on the importance of talking about God and to understand the conversation of God, to understand the importance of reading and discerning the signs of the times, but a discernment of the signs of the times which does not want to establish a catalogue of things which aren't going well in the world, but a discernment of the signs of the times which wants to identify, even if it's fragile, to identify how this world is working. As we say that a woman is in labouring, this world is labouring itself in labour in Christ. And Christ is becoming himself, working, labouring, and the discernment of the signs of the times to which the order is invited to participate is in the service, a preaching. This is a reading of the signs which is joyful and hopeful and positive, which wants to find points of reference, find in the world what the grace of the word is trying to do and say, which we human beings do not yet appreciate or know. And so thus, while we are discerning these worlds in labour that we were talking about this morning, we are trying to discern the places where the world is being born. If we need wise midwives to await the birth. If these midwives need to be formed and educated to know what are the signs that will symptoms of the giving birth. In the constitutions, it's often asked of us, or asked, that communities constitute themselves in an exchange about their preaching, talk about their preaching, to mutually enrich themselves by their experiences of preaching. When we speak about the Dominican family, it's often asked that the whole order together does this work, and it's what we're doing for 3 days. We're doing it to become men and women, midwives and mid-husbands, so to speak, to expect something from the world, expect something because we're waiting for this person to enter the world. The work of the service of the order in the world is a work of this hope here, expectation. To hold oneself there where the world is in labour in order to espouse the hope, the destiny of this world in labour, and to dare to to meet it there where the world comes to itself, there where the world comes to its own truth, because the world receives the one who is truth. And it's for this reason that to speak of preaching among ourselves is constitutive of our communities. Very often, brothers say to me, with your insistences on the community project, the fact that we have to talk about our preaching and discern preaching and all this, we don't have enough time to do all these meetings. But it's not a question of dividing up our time. It's a question of the essence itself, the essence of the communities. Our communities must learn to be wise communities, mid-communities, so to speak, that are like midwives, which wait a birth. Mid-communities. My fourth point is that if we wait and expect in this way, and in parenthesis, this kind of stance of waiting, watching, this stance of that we keep, which the nuns keep at the heart of the order. The nuns of the order don't just have the task of keeping themselves apart in order to preach for those who are not apart. The nuns of the order have the task to remind us that the order of preachers is an order which waits for the birth of the world. In this way, the preaching is at the service of the church which itself is growing. And what in the constitutions of the friars preachers, it's about a service of the church, and it always insists, the constitutions insist that the brothers preachers dare to go there where the faith is not yet present, there where the church is not yet established, there where all is not yet structured. Preaching is not, first of all, to go and put ourselves there where we already have established institutions, there where we have lots of work to maintain our institutions. Preaching of the order must lead us to go there where we wait. We're still waiting, servants of a conversation of God with the world. It's wonderful to read in the constitutions of the friars how far the definition of preaching leads more and more to speak about missionaries, those who go out far away, beyond the frontiers. And beyond the frontiers, this means to us today beyond geographical frontiers, certainly, and there are still many countries where we would love to see brothers go, or there might be only one brother. But beyond the frontiers of our own intellectual conditioning, or our own knowledge, or the frontiers of our own certainties, or the frontiers of all that keeps us secure, to go beyond the frontiers, not to be proud of being exotic, but because we would like to serve the church as it grows. In this world which is being born, the church wants to be born as well. And the church is not, first of all, in this globalized world, it's not a kind of to do with a liberalism which is both fascinating but totalitarian. The church is not an institution which organizes the number of believers and distributes the sacraments. L'Église is the church is, first of all, in a permanent state of missionary activity in service of the word who preaches, so that one day there would be a need for the sacraments. To be in the service of the church, which opens its doors, not just because the church would be a center and we have to go beyond the center, but because the world is a place inside out, and that the order of preachers is too often settled there where it thinks it is in the right place, forgetting where is the inside out. To try to make a tunic without realizing what's on the inside, what is holding it up or holding it together, we would not go very far at all. To be in the service of a church which is growing, and if we do this, this is my final point, then the servant of the word will make us an insomniacs. Insomniacs because we will not yet have worked together, collaborated sufficiently. Insomniacs because we would not yet have put into harmony, symphony, the resources which constitute the family of preachers. Insomniacs because we would not yet have shared sufficiently this charism of preaching which must become a reality for the whole church. A church in a permanent state of preaching. Insomniacs because we would be thinking about all those who do not yet have the joy of knowing the face of Christ. Insomniacs because we would think in the end about all those whom we have not dared to look, those who have not yet dared to look at their faces and their lives. Insomniacs because in the end we would not yet have detached ourselves, sufficiently from ourselves to say that it is not ourselves who preach, but He who would like to preach with us.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Bruno, for these 5 ways, for these 5 criteria that would allow us to know what defines us as Dominicans, men and women, serving in obedience. Very important not to forget that we first are Dominicans listening to the conversation full of grace that takes place between God and humanity. Secondly, that we are ministers of the word, not only for what we say, but by what we do. Dominicans that work for the salvation of the world in a place of in a hopeful environment, especially where the church is not there in what we have called in past chapters the frontiers. And Dominicans, men and women, that we are part of a family that share a charism, resources, struggles, but also a preaching that sees and announces the face, the history, and the life of Jesus. Thank you, Bruno, for your reflection. And continuing with this way, I invite our sister Kunder from Iraq to share with us her experience of service in our order.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
proclaiming the salvation of our Lord to all people in every situation and time, even in time of persecution through ministry, is not an easy task. Christianity in Iraq is believed to be among the oldest communities in the world. We trace our history to the 1st century AD or the beginning of the 2nd century. The Christian community has been surviving with small numbers. It has faced crisis and persecution throughout the history. The Church and the Dominicans, as part of the Church, has played a great role in protecting, giving hope to people, and in keeping church traditions. Since the early days of our congregations as Dominican sisters in 1870s, our goal has been to serve people in the education system, especially to teach women to depend on themselves and to give them tools so they can work and save and have some dignity. Our sisters, along with education and nursing, have also been engaged in catechesis programs and pastoral work. During some periods, they have taught women valuable skills and have given them opportunities to provide for their families with dignity in times of hardship and war. We are present in cities and in Christian villages. Our role is to be witness to God's love and mercy to all people, despite their religion, serving people in hospitals and schools. Even after the government nationalized our schools in the early 1970s, the sisters continued their work in the same place with dynamism and generosity. After all, the people of God deserve to be served in the best way. And it was important for us to continue to be a sign of hope and faith to our people. Drastic change happened in the summer of 2014 that turned the Christians' life in Iraq to a nightmare and stirred up everything. The Christian community existence was threatened by a terrorist group that called itself Islamic State, ISIS, or is known as Daesh. More than 125 Christians were forced to flee their homes from Mosul in June and from Nineveh Plain on August 6, 2014, leaving everything behind. We headed to our only exit to Kurdistan, the semi-autonomous region in north of Iraq, which became a safe haven for Christians who were fleeing the Islamic State. People were stripped of their dignity and unjustly deprived of all they owned. Overnight, Christians in Iraq became homeless and poor. Nineveh Plain collapsed in no time, which created a chaos. People more than ever could not trust others from other religions. The country was torn apart. In the midst of the shock, disbelief, and chaos, we as a community had to respond and act fast to meet the needs of our people. We did not have a plan, nor did we have resources or means to start aid programs. We started with what we had and tried every possible way to help and give them some hope. We also, like the rest of our people, were forced to leave with very few things. We started by distributing milk and diapers for children, giving blankets and mattresses, and setting up tents. We asked ourselves the basic question, what would Jesus do in such a situation? Matthew answers and give us what Jesus would expect of a human. In Matthew 25:35-36, when he says, I was hungry, I was thirsty, I was stranger, I was naked, I was sick, I was in a prison. So we answered with what we expected Jesus would want us to do. Giving people the necessity of life gave them hope and assured them that God is still with us, acting through many people to save them. Daily, we united ourselves to help our people. Our faithfulness to our daily prayers and Mass helped us get through the struggle even when we ourselves were trying to find an answer to why us and why this happens to these people. We were sent 2 by 2 to every IPD camp, internally displaced persons camp, to work with the people, not considering our people to be refugees in Kurdistan is one of the main problems we face daily. We are IDPs, so we do not have the rights of refugees, which means we have no rights to get treated in the hospitals in Kurdistan for free, nor we can ask for official papers or attend Kurdish schools. For our people, Christian people, they saw us as witness to faith and comforting signs in the midst of most of the black times in their lives. In the midst of confusion and questioning of where to go or what to do, our presence gives them some hope and life, and a sign that Christianity can continue in Iraq. Our purpose in offering help from the first day of displacement was flowing from our faith that human dignity is the most important thing to maintain in time of war. One of the main challenges that the IPDs faced was finding places to live because they could not continue to live in the tents in the winter nor in schools that were turned to camps. So families shared houses or even small rooms or prefabricated rooms that were set up for IDPs. All this increased problems and tension among the families who also suffered from unemployment. The victims of the conflict are usually the children. We thought of serving children and saving them from such environment for at least part of the day. We rented homes in the past 2 years and converted them to kindergartens. The first year of displacement, we received 150 kids, and the second year, 300 kids. The kindergartens gave opportunity for the kids to be like kids and act like kids. Also, the children were given the opportunity to express themselves through painting and singing. In addition, they learned how to act non-violently toward each other. The kindergarten provided employment also to some families. This has been possible because of people of goodwill and their efforts. Also, we faced concerns about education. We were faced with the reality that the IDP children could not enter Kurdish schools. We realized that more should be given to our people, something other than food and basic needs. Again, people's dignity was very important. With the help of humanitarian organizations and other Christian organizations, a school was built on a property of a church, and we were asked to staff it. The school first year received 400 students, the second year 600 students. It has become one of the best schools in the area. All students and teachers are Christians and all are IPDs. The next year, which is this year, we staffed another school in Duhok, and this school opened its door to Christians, Muslims, and Yazidis. Our goal is to produce an educated generation and to provide a place where student faith can grow. Education programs, whether in schools, kindergartens, or even in trauma program where our sisters minister, are places where our faith and traditions are passed on. In each of these, God shows compassion and love. When a child takes his school card home with good grades, when a child takes home a painting or a craft from school or kindergarten, or when a youth has a purpose in life and attends college. All these give the families a new life and a reason to live. These are signs of hope in the midst of confusion, chaos, and frustration about the present and the future. For the rest of the sisters who teach in colleges or seminaries in Kurdistan, part of the day continue to be devoted to work in the IDP's programs. We also had to care about observing our traditions and preserving them. By keeping religious traditions alive, we maintain a sense of connection to the past and continually to the future, even when we are out of our towns. Traditions are important for Christians in the Middle East because they help us establish our identity as Oriental Christians. Even in the land of the exile, Christians express their traditions in different ways, putting crosses on their tents on the Feast of Triumph of the Holy Cross in September, lighting a fire to celebrate Christmas Eve, or fasting 3 days in February, fasting of Prophet Jonah for repentance and forgiveness, and many other traditions. God moves with us, with His people in every step and season. We face also a question of faith. Still, people struggled with the question of who God is and why would He allow so much pain. We listened to them. The question of faith was the most important thing to respond to, and every individual had to respond to it. For most of us, our faith in the Christian towns was inherited faith. We did not work hard for it. We received it because our parents and ancestors were Christians, so we believed in what they believed. Our traditions and practices helped us honor and connect to our faith. Now, while people question their faith, it is our job to help people understand their faith. As it was important to provide living necessities, we also worked closely with the priests to celebrate Sunday Masses in camps so that our rights will be preserved, Syriac or Kurdian rights. Our priests who fled the Christian towns had nothing to celebrate Mass. At one of the camps, one of our sisters used her scapular as an altar cloth. Also, prayer groups were set in camps and gave people the courage to continue their life of faith. Some children were baptized, and we also organized First Communion programs for children. These activities help people stay connected to their faith. Gradually, they were able to say that we are the Church of God as human and not the building that we have left behind in our towns. Thankfully, today, the church was able to rebuild again in these camps. The image that keeps coming to my mind is the vision of Prophet Ezekiel. Ezekiel, in the first chapters, saw that the glory of God leaves the temple in Jerusalem. Chapter 10. Then he sees that the glory of God settles in Babylon, indicating that God is with His people wherever they are, even in the land of the exiles. But then, in the last chapters of Ezekiel, 40 to 48, we see that the glory of God returns to Jerusalem again after rebuilding the temple. In Ezekiel's vision, the temple is all rebuilt and shows that God was with His people wherever they went. Today, after liberating all Christian towns, we face new challenges and more questions. People's homes are either burnt, destroyed, or in danger of falling. Since our displacement 2 years ago, we lived in hope. We lived in hope of going back home and returning to our old life. We hope that we will see our homes standing and our churches cleaned. Now we realize that we will not be going back anytime soon, nor the safety issue will be solved anytime soon. People are afraid of the future and what will happen in terms of work and education if they return to their homes. They are also worried about the relationships with the neighboring towns, especially the non-Christian towns, who already have betrayed us when we had to leave. People wonder, where shall we go now? At this point, we offer our people the support they need. We will continue our mission as long as there are Christians in Iraq. We realize, just as the Israeli exiles did long time ago, returning will be in small groups, and maybe only the poor will return. Preaching salvation in ministry is giving hope in a hopeless time. It is choosing a way of life by letting God work through us. We do this by building schools and starting new schools when people are losing hope and energy to fight for their rights and dignity. Our aim is to witness to them that Jesus walks among us and helps us every single day, through others sometimes also. We witness by our lives that tragedy, pain, and violence will not have the last word in our country. God's salvation is at work in the most hard and disturbed places on earth. It is not easy, but it is possible. We hope to contribute to making Christians a light to the nations, as the prophet Isaiah speaks of his servant or Israel, to be a light to all, whether they are staying in the country or leaving. Bringing salvation is to end suffering, or at least eliminate suffering as much as possible. It involves not only prayers, sacraments, and preaching the word, but equally or more important is doing service. It is not enough to speak about love and justice and nonviolence when people have no shelter or no food. To end, I would like to say what our Pope Francis says in his address on August 21st, 2016. He says, "It is love which saves. The love that is already here on earth is a source of happiness to those who, in meekness, patience, and justice, forget themselves and give themselves to others, especially the weakest." And he continues by saying, "Our life is serious, and the goal to achieve it is important, which is eternal salvation." Thank you.
To serve God's people. I would like just to highlight the fact that Before, during, and after, you have shown us how to serve through education, healthcare, but especially through your presence among the people of God. And what remains and what has been constant has been the faith, the hope, and especially the love that you and your sisters have been able to share with all our brothers and sisters in Iraq. I dare to tell you in the name of the Dominican family that we are with you and that we pray for you and that we will continue supporting you in whatever way we can. Thank you for all you do.
Sister Luna, I've had the privilege of listening to the story from Iraq at least 3 times because I am on the DSI Council, and as we have DSI Assembly, we usually will highlight the situation in Iraq. But it's never enough. Each time I hear it, it's new for me. And I just would like to, in solidarity with Sister Luna and our sisters in Iraq, to say thank you for the quality of witness that you give in the name of the order. And thank you for making my job today very easy, because what I intend to share with us in my little reflection is how we preach, practical approach to preaching. And I think there is no other way to do this than what we see our sisters in Iraq do. Thank you so much. And I will also want to extend my appreciation to this assembly for giving me the privilege to share my reflection on what we have been discussing from the beginning of this Congress, and particularly today as we reflect on Sent for Service. When the Dominican Order was founded 800 years ago, it was to address a specific need. She was founded to address the doctrinal and moral challenge of Albigensianism. In the past 800 years, through the apostolic zeal of Dominican women and men of different age, race, and color, the vision of St. Dominic to set the world aflame with the gospel of truth is being concretized. When we look back on 800 years, we can say with every sense of humility and gratitude that Dominicans on all continents of the world have registered themselves as men and women of the gospel. As preachers, we have endeavored to be attentive to the Lord in prayer and in our contemplation of truth. We have labored to share the fruits of our contemplation with the world in a characteristically joyful manner by being proficient at the pulpit, well cultivated at our centers of studies, compassionate healers at our healthcare centers, audacious in our work for justice and peace and integrity of creation, as we see the work of Father Mike Deeb and Celestina in the work of justice and peace across the world. In our selflessness in our services to the poor at the grassroots. In these and many more ways, we have been striving to live up to the ideal represented by the acronym OP, which we proudly append to our names. Thus, Dominicans are, properly speaking, apostles of truth. What I propose in this exchange is some practical approach which might help to make our preaching ministry more life-giving for the men and women of our time. I intend to look briefly at how we might understand our preaching by reflecting on Jesus as the model for preachers. The way to learn to be preachers is to learn from the preacher. How do we envisage our Dominican preaching ministry? Our preaching ministry could be envisaged as creative, empowering, and dynamic. Dynamic activity for the purpose of promoting a living faith within the life situation of the people concerned. The three key words here are creative, empowering, and dynamic. Creative would mean that our preaching must employ every possible and positive means of making the good news come alive in the world. Pope St. John Paul II invited us to a new evangelization, an evangelization that is new in zeal, in method, and in expression, so that its effect may, using the words of Blessed Pope Paul VI, permeate every strata of humanity, and through its influence, transforming humanity from within and making it new. This means, therefore, that we must, by our creative ways of doing pastoral ministry, help to affect and transform the newly emerging cultures of our time, which in many ways are not in consonance with the true faith. Empowering. Our way of preaching must be such that it opens the door to other collaborators. It must recognize the gifts of others and harness them for the spread of the gospel. It must see the entire church as family of God on mission, where we recognize, affirm, and permit one another's gift to blossom. Dominican preaching must empower others to preach and prepare the world for the reign of God. In the church, we are collaborators, not competitors. Dynamic. That is, like a living organism, our preaching must be open to change in respect of the signs of the times. This does not in any way imply letting our preaching be controlled by the trend of society, not a gullible response to society, but a well-thought-out response which is born out of a qualitative contemplation of truth as entrenched in our Dominican charism and under the guidance of the Holy Spirit. As we know, the Holy Spirit is the principal agent of evangelization. When these elements are present, our preaching can be said to be characterized by audacity, realism, and hope. This was a theme reflected on at the DSI General Assembly in 2010. Model, Jesus as our model for preaching. Jesus Christ is the preacher. In preaching, people experience him in many different ways. We learn from him that a preacher is a shepherd and a servant. Matthew 20, 25 to 28. One who keeps his flock in view. One who is willing to lay down his life in defense of the sheep. In this case, a good shepherd and not a hired hand. John 10:12. From Jesus' approach, we find clues to a practical approach to preaching, such as the following. Jesus taught. Matthew 5, 7, and 13. Jesus recognized the poverty of knowledge about the values of the kingdom, and he did not hesitate to teach his followers. Dominicans in the 21st century must apply themselves tenaciously to teaching people about the Christian life. Apart from teaching in formal educational institutions, we must make ourselves available to teach the many others at the grassroots who are languishing in poverty of the Word of God. It is not enough to bask in the euphoria of being recognized around the world as people of great minds. I remembered when I made my first vows, I went home on holiday, and I had the opportunity to attend a celebration. I think it was an ordination. And at some point, we were like greeting people and introducing ourselves. And when I introduced myself and said I was a Dominican, I remember one of the priests said to me, "Dominican? Wow, you must be very intelligent." And it's like, and this is the way people perceive us. But it is not enough to be carried away by this recognition around the world as people of great minds. We have Thomas Aquinas, we have Albert the Great, we have so many to our credit. The ability to break the word of God open to people in very ordinary and comprehensible manner is what gives life to our preaching. We just heard the story of Iraq. Our search for knowledge must not be for its own sake or for our own individual self-pride, but it must be at the service of the salvation of souls. A Dominican who is not moved with compassion to teach as Jesus taught is a thief. I borrowed the words of Father Anthony Akinwale, who happens to be here. Many years ago, he came to my community to give retreat. And he said, any Dominican who refuses to preach is a thief. Because our charism says we contemplate truth and share with others the fruits of our contemplation. So if we hoard this truth to ourselves, by limiting our idea of being preachers to just, like the master said a while ago, maintaining the already existing institutions and not willing to go beyond those boundaries, then we are thieves. Are we willing to teach catechism, for instance? When was the last time I taught catechism? When was the last time I helped to organize some faith-sharing group where I live, maybe in my community or in the parish? Sometimes we are very preoccupied with maintaining the structures that we have. And please understand me. I am not saying by any means that we do not need to maintain them. But are they sufficient? Are they enough? As we look back on 800 years, will they carry us into the next 800 years? Jesus went about doing good. We are looking at Jesus as model for practical preaching. One important component of evangelization is outreach. We need to be more visible. Jesus did not wait to be met by the people in a particular place. He went out to meet them in the synagogue, in their homes, on the streets, in the marketplaces, and even at parties. He went to the wedding at Cana. Dominican preaching obliges us to move out of our comfort zones and reach out to people wherever they may be found. St. Dominic was a man of the roads and not of the comfort of the cloister. There are many who are lonely, many who are sick, many who are aged, many who feel rejected and dejected, many who are bent over double with suffering. And all this, all they need is our presence, our smile, our touch, and reassuring words that God loves them even in their suffering. And I think, again, that's what our Dominican sisters in Iraq have done with the people out there. We must be willing to become Christ's hands and feet to reach out to these people. Right now, I'm involved in the formation of women who want to be catechists. And part of their formation at some point is we send them out on outreach. We send them to rural communities, and all they have to do is visit people in their homes, irrespective of religion. Because I live in the northeastern part of Nigeria, and that is one of the, when Sister Luna was speaking, I could resonate with that, the difficulty, the challenge of living and working in northern Nigeria. And so we send these women out, and they're supposed to visit homes, share with people, listen to their stories, pray with them where possible, encourage them. And just before I came, the group that went out came back. And when they return, they have to share their experiences. And one of the groups, the person who reported said, they went into a home, and in this home, they met an elderly woman who was blind and couldn't walk. They didn't know she was blind when they got in there because her eyes were open, until they saw that she was crawling and trying to feel her way around to be able to make food, prepare food for herself and her grandchild, a little girl who was staying with her. She had nobody to help. And when they got there, the first thing they could do was to take up the chores, make the fire for her, wash the dishes, and cook the food. And what she said to them, "Who are you? Where have you come from?" I don't know if there's any other way to speak about the love of Jesus. And another group shared their testimony. They had gone into the home of another woman who had a son. She's had, all her children were dead except one. And that particular one also had mental problem. And she was living alone with this young man. Everyone around called her a witch. She was responsible for her misfortune. She was one who killed all her children. And she had lived in that situation for so long that she practically stayed in her room all day. She never went out to see anybody. And when these people entered, when the women catechists entered, she was surprised to see that anybody would visit her. And when they listened to her and they heard her story, they were touched. And she broke down and cried. It was like for the first time somebody listened to her story. And she asked them, "Please, will you come again?" I think there are so many people that want to meet people like us. I've also had a personal experience of going out on home visitation, and I met a group of women designing calabash by the fire. I had a little crucifix around my neck, and I bent down to watch what they were doing, and I was asking them questions. "How do you do this?" They were showing me. And at some point, one of the women looked at me, and she said to me, "Give me this, the crucifix I was wearing." She asked me for it. And then she had amulets around her neck. So I said, "If I give you mine, will you give me yours?" And she said, hers was not good. Mine was better. And I said, "Okay, but what do you know that this is?" She said she didn't know, just trying to speak to what the master said about some places, frontiers where the gospel has never been heard. We have such situation, at least in my country, in the northern part of Nigeria. And she said to me, I said, what do you see? She said, "I saw a man that did like this." She saw a man that was like this. And that was the beginning of the story. It was a great privilege. Unfortunately, my novice mistress gave me the crucifix, so I couldn't give it to her. I promised I was going to bring a crucifix for her, but by the time I went back, because they came home for one of their traditional festivals. By the time I went back there a week later to give her a crucifix, they had gone. Encounter. We have listened to this over and over again the course of our stay here. We need to go about like Jesus, meeting people, listening to people, and helping them to encounter Jesus through us. Jesus gave them food. Our preaching must focus not only on bringing people to heaven, but also on their temporal or material well-being. It must be a holistic rendition of the good news, whereby as church or parish communities, We include in our plans the feeding of the poor among us, not just shy away from such responsibility by saying, "Go in peace, keep warm, and eat well," as we find in James 2:16. If our Iraqi sisters had said to the people, "Go in peace, keep warm, and eat well," I'm sure they will have had no story to share with us today. And that brings to my mind a similar situation in Nigeria. As I said, I live very close to where all this Boko Haram stuff is happening. Personally, I have been very lucky to escape 2 bomb blasts. And in the month of October, the village next to where I live was attacked by herdsmen. Many of them were killed, their houses were burnt, and they ran into the village where I am. And they've been there since October last year. And at some point, many of them took courage to go back to see if they could rebuild their homes. But I didn't know that there were still a few left, because the families that welcomed them were equally poor families, but they brought them in and they've been feeding them. And so on Christmas Eve, last December 24th, I was sitting in the church. I can't remember ever crying on Christmas Day or Christmas Eve until that day. A little boy walked into the church. He was one of those whose family escaped from the attack. And all he had on him was a little T-shirt that didn't cover the stomach. There were no pants. And for those who know Nigeria well, Jos is considered the coldest region or part of Nigeria. It's cold. And the little boy was there, shivering. And I looked at him and I cried. For the first time, I said to myself, how did we respond as church, as parish community, as Dominican convent to this particular situation? They came to church on Christmas Eve to hear the story of how God became man and dwelt among us. Is that their experience? Could we make that experience more real for them? Jesus healed. Those we encounter in our pastoral engagements must go away feeling touched by the healing power of God in whatever way they need to be healed. Sometimes we express a certain phobia for the word healing, or better still, we are quick to associate miracles and healing with Pentecostalism, as if they were foreign to the Catholic faith. In October, last year, the Dominican family in Nigeria had a workshop on the challenge of Pentecostalism and how we might respond as Dominicans. And we looked at all of the issues. Why are our people going away from the church? Why are the young people leaving in droves to the Pentecostal churches? What are they looking for that we do not have in the Catholic Church? How could we engage them better in such a way that what they go out to seek, they know they find? So, our preaching must carry with it a healing effect. The words we speak ought to soothe aching souls. Our deeds, when done in love, must have healing effects. Here we must bear in mind that the healing the gospel brings is greater than physical healing. It is the whole person who is healed by the gospel. Jesus chose his pastoral agents. Peter was chosen to feed the sheep. Mary Magdalene was chosen as an apostle of the resurrection. As mentioned earlier, recognizing that we are a family of God on mission is essential to the success of our preaching ministry. The charism of the lay faithful must be recognized and promoted. It is not just enough, according to Father Antonio Akinwale, to get someone baptized, but as members of a living and active family, each one must have a function to perform. In the spirit of new evangelization, every member of the family of God must be given the opportunity to express their particular charisma for the good of the church. In this respect, Dominican preaching must facilitate the integral formation of the lay faithful so that they will be fully involved in the preaching mission of the church. And this brings me to an issue that has been on for some time now. That is the issue of women preachers in the Dominican order. This we have discussed at different levels, especially at DSI. Some people feel that they are called to preach at the pulpit. We do not know how soon this will come. It may never come. But I'd like to say this to my sisters and to the members of the laity, that while we continue to have this conversation, that we seek all these different pulpits around where we can truly bring the people to Christ. The practical things that we are already doing as congregations, the ministries that we have, where people encounter us and they feel like they have encountered Jesus, that we continue to promote those while this conversation continues. Jesus brought children to himself. What plans do we have for young people in the order? What are we doing to get them involved in the preaching mission? We do know that this is the age of the media. Jesus taught people using what was familiar to them. If we must get the attention of the young people around the world today, I think that we have no option but to get involved also in this new age religion called information technology and the media. Jesus witnessed by his life. He witnessed in his life what he preached. In the course of this Congress, we have listened so much to the value, great value that is attached to witness of life. We cannot be preachers if we are not witnesses. What is the quality of our witnessing as individual Dominicans, as communities of St. Dominic? If we have communities where brothers or sisters don't speak to one another, how can we be a presence? If we have communities where brothers and sisters pursue their own personal goal instead of the common goal, how can we be witnesses? And so many other things that we know. Before I joined the convent, I happened to visit a community of sisters, thank God, not Dominicans. And something happened there that I never forgot. They had a man, one of their lay staff, working in the convent. And he was the laundry man, but he was also looking after the poultry and some other chores in the house. And at some point, a sister came and spoke to him harshly, and he was not happy. He made a comment, and I will say it in Yoruba and try to translate it. He said, "Àwọn sister tọ́lọ́run ò mọ̀." Sisters that God do not recognize. I don't know if that makes sense. What am I trying to talk about? The quality of our life, the things we do, the things we say, the way people read us, all of this put together go into our preaching mission. We cannot afford to give bad example. We cannot afford to speak in ways that even unbelievers would not speak, but sometimes this happens among us. We have to give witness if we must be authentic preachers. Jesus prayed. Jesus withdrew on different occasions to re-energize himself in prayer. In St. Dominic intended that a Dominican be like Jesus, a person of contemplation and prayer, because it is only by the power of the Lord of the harvest that the harvest can be bountiful. Our preaching as Dominicans must be built on a solid relationship with Christ in prayer. St. Dominic spoke to God all night and spoke about God all day. And today, or this week, we are celebrating the fruits of his prophetic and apostolic endeavor. Finally, 800 years after its foundation, the Dominican Order has a providential opportunity to renew her self-understanding and to reposition herself for a more effective preaching mission. I remembered very much when the Master of the Order came to address the DSI Coordinating Council, just as we're beginning preparation for celebrating this Jubilee year. He said that how he wished that this celebration of the Jubilee will be centered more on the internal renewal of the order, more than anything else. That the order will renew itself. And that renewal should begin with individuals, communities, where we create safe spaces for our brothers and sisters to be able to express themselves, to be able to be who they are called to be. We will discover from our individual experiences that pulpits and schools, hospitals, and our traditional way of preaching are no longer sufficient, that we need so much to be able to address the world in ways that will be comprehensible to the world. And in doing this, every single one of us must make it a personal project to preach. Preaching must be a personal project for every Dominican. Otherwise, as I said earlier on, we will be thieves. Like Jesus and St. Dominic, we will need to care so much about the salvation of souls as to feel compelled to embrace our call to be more available and present to God's people. I would like to end by telling this story. A priest was sent to a parish. When he got there, he was full of zeal. He wanted to do so much in the church. And he will invite the people to seminars, invite them to mass, invite them to all kinds of things. They would not come. He got frustrated at some point. And what did he do? He told them, he rang the bell and he made an announcement that the church was dead and there would be a funeral on Saturday. The church was dead and there would be a funeral on Saturday. So everybody needed to come for the funeral. And they were wondering, church dead? Funeral? So out of curiosity, the whole village came to church on Saturday. And then he made a coffin for the funeral. So they actually saw a coffin. But inside the coffin, he had a mirror, a very big mirror. And they placed the coffin in front of the church. And the priest came forward and said, now, our beloved brother or sister, the church is dead. And we are, as I said to you, we'll be having a funeral. But before then, before the final rite, I would like to invite each one of you to come and pay your last respect to the church. So they got up one after the other, and whoever looks into the coffin saw what? Saw himself or herself. And when that was finished, he closed the coffin and he said, it's time to go to the cemetery. And everywhere was silent. What is going to become of the Dominican order 800 years from now? What is going to become of the Catholic Church many years down the road from now? Will the church be dead? Will the church be alive? We will be part of those who will go for the funeral of the order. If this is not to be the case, then we must find more practical ways of bringing the good news to the world. so that in the face of the brokenness of our world, nothing makes sense but the gift of a people who are willing to be poured out in libation for the salvation of souls. And nothing could be more Dominican. Thank you.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Sister Faustina, for your intervention, for your words. Thanks to the three panelists. They asked me that we have until 4:50 for some questions. Therefore, that we have very little time. Ask you as a favor, if you want to stand and then raise up your hand so we can see you. I invite all of those who are following us through the internet to send us your questions so we can answer them. I remember you. I remind you that this is the moment for questions. If you ask your questions, make sure that they are brief. Make sure that they are not comments. Make sure that they are questions. Thank you. Questions, please.
Braille de Brasil. Como vês, eu hablo.
He's going to speak in Portuguese. He's from Brazil. I want to congratulate the panelists for having two sisters and one brother. This could be it's probably because of the service and the good quality of the service. The question is to the Master of the Order, Bruno. From your third criteria, from your third way that you gave us about the service, the third was service of obedience of the service to the world. My question is, if you have a proposal or an idea or some criteria that is concrete for us as a Dominican family, for us to embrace even better obedience, service and the care of creation in concrete service to life.
Deux propositions.
Two words, ideas. One is that in this world, how can we collaborate with other people on all the ways or journeys, people who are looking for the truth, who are looking to go further towards the truth. And this truth is not possible if each person's path is not understood. The truth demands that everyone participates, each human being participates. Second idea, looking at the analyses of the world which we're undertaking, crisis of the world, injustice, not enough common good, bad economic circulation, and so on. Look at all of that and correct it in our communities. And to correct it in our communities, correct it in our order. How can we do that? And if we do that, I think we would get closer to a way of carrying the same destiny. So on the one hand, working with other people, and working on various paths which open up more truth. And secondly, to apply what we're saying about the world to our own communities. 2 examples. A relationship with money and the common good. And secondly, the migration of people in the world.
Father, service is at the heart of our Christian life, and especially when we talk about our Dominican vocation, it's something more with stress. But sometimes it happens in our communities that when we are young, but the seniors, they do not support in service. But on the other hand, they always create problems. They create obstacles. And as young, sometimes we get confused that what is this going on? So my question is, in this situation, what should we do? What should be our way of serving, either to compromise or to come out with some clear understanding?
Is that for who? I am sorry, but we do not know who would you like the question to go to? Who is the question for?
My question is to Brother Bruno.
Oh. Thank you.
Ici encore,
Here again, I think this is a bit of a caricature perhaps, but firstly let's be aware that the reality of refugees today this is what I see in visits around the world, in the order, the existence, the refugee's life. This is what Sister Luhmann talked about. The refugees is not only a reality for other people, but it's a reality which touches us, touches our lives, touches our realities, our families, our friends, our countries. And to be aware of this, as we are doing here, as we can do by staying in touch one with another, to become aware of this and stay aware of it is very important in our world, considering that perhaps, if you like, the question of regarding Montesinos, who said, are they not human beings? I think that today the question of Montesinos is, are we not human beings, all of us? Secondly, I think it's incredibly important, we've said it these last few days, it's very important to strengthen the interaction between our local realities, which we live in, and the international level. And for this reason, I think that the presence of the Order through its permanent delegation at the United Nations is incredibly important to strengthen that, and for us, each of us, to cultivate and strengthen it such that the voice of 100 voices might find its place in the discussions of the United Nations, so that at the same time we might have a work of compassion for people, and a structural compassion.
In English, and I address Sister Luma. Sister, I join the rest of the Congress here, the speakers here at the Congress, and all the others who say we are with you in the situation in Iraq, and we pray for you almost every day in our different countries. And I appreciate the work that you are doing, the great support to the people, but the social worker in me starts asking many other questions. The sisters are offering good education to the people there. They are giving them the faith, support in faith that they need. Are there other ways, sisters, that you have tried in terms of giving the dignity to these people, in terms of connecting to organizations that support a proper settlement in another place for such displaced people? I'm thinking of the way that the people of the South Sudan were helped by the Christian Foundation for the Children and the Aged, where they took one family after another into a country that they can accept them, and they will have done the process for them. I do not know, sister, if you have explored such opportunities. Sorry, I'm a first speaker naturally, but I'm sorry. Has it been understood, sister? Okay.
Okay, first I want to say thank you very much for all the prayers from different congregations all over the world. We really feel supported by all of you. We have not done what you just said about in Sudan. We are supporting the families in Kurdistan mainly. That's the main work we are doing. Yeah, really. So social, we have like one of our sisters work in clinic that was set for only IDPs, but I'm sorry. But I can't.
I'm not sure, sister, if it was clear. I was asking if your community has explored opportunities where some organizations help resettle a family or two in a place where they will be accepted.
Oh, no. There are different organizations that are helping in Iraq, more so in the beginning of crisis than now. But resettling families with other families did not happen through organizations. But with the first year of displacement, there were some families in, let's say, in Ankawa, which is a Christian town, received other families for a short period of time. But receiving a whole family for the past 2 years, there had not been done any of that. Neither do the organizations anything with that. More were like settling camps, refugee camps.
Son 4:46.
It's 4:46. We have time for one or perhaps two more questions. I want to be brief in Spanish. Jose Fernandez was just talking about that we have two sisters as panelists and only one brother, even though he's the master. But in this case, it's just there's one person there, one brother. Sister Luma, I have followed your witness through the internet, and I feel very proud what you have said concretely. You are the visible face. We try to communicate with you today, but because of the language I wasn't able. I feel very, very proud of you, for you and for your community, and I can't help that our problems are silly, along the problems that if we can compare them with your problems, our problems are silly. What Jose Fernandez used to say or was saying earlier, about a week ago, we asked my community to a sister that was working in my parish that went to mission to Vietnam, but no situation of risk, but a very difficult situation. It's also a difficult witness over there. My question is, and besides prayer, that is very important, in the exchange of feelings, how can we help your mission that you as a community realize? Thank you.
I want to say in the beginning that we still have our silly things in the community. So these are part of community life. About supporting us, we really are not sure of what's happening now or what's going to happen in the near future, because as I said, we are facing the question of whether we will return to our homes, towns or not. And if we return, then there will be a lot of rebuilding. We had discussed this topic with the local church, and the plan is that we will rebuild people's homes before we rebuild churches and convents. So if that happens, if we return, then we definitely will be asking people around in the world to support the Christians to rebuild their communities again.
Y tenemos tiempo para...
We have time for one more last question that Father Carlos Aspiros, no, or somebody else? I just saw him with the microphone. I thought he had a question.
Muchas gracias por la oportunidad.
Thank you for the opportunity. And the question is for, as members of the Youth Dominican International Movement, in what way? In what way? Is there a way for us to walk with you through that struggle? Many times we go around, we travel to different countries and we cooperate with them, but we see also the difficulty of arriving to Iraq and Pakistan. Is there an opportunity to walk with you? And the question would be for the two sisters. And if the Master would like to say something, he's also welcome.
Thank you very much. How could the young people in the order help? I think that one way of doing that might be, first of all, to stay in contact with the sisters, maybe by way of correspondence, offer them words of prayers, words of encouragement, and also, where possible, maybe to volunteer to join in the work that they do. I know there's the volunteer program, Dominican Volunteers or something like that, where young people volunteer to go out. But that will depend on what they see to be a need, the area of need that they might want the young people to help with. I look at our own situation, for instance, in Nigeria. Yesterday, I was speaking with a brother from France who spoke to me about volunteering. Sending young people to Nigeria to work with us. And we are looking at the situation in Iraq, but we also know that there are other situations around the world that's not quite good. I can speak for my country, Nigeria. Yesterday, the bishop from Ilorin, our brother, raised an issue about Islam and the fact that dialogue is a major problem because the intellectuals may dialogue, but the reality on ground is not the same. In the north of Nigeria, where we have lived and worked for over 40 years, the situation there is very bad. We know of the Boko Haram. Those of you who have been following the news about Nigeria, we know that it has been very bad. On the 26th of December, 53 villages were leveled, in Kaduna State. So when he spoke to me about young people volunteering to come, for instance, in Nigeria, I said, it's a good idea, but we will have to look at the situation, especially those who may want to come to the north of Nigeria in terms of security, because we can't guarantee what happens even to us. as I shared earlier on, I have narrowly escaped 2 bomb blasts. I live in a place where we go out in the morning, we are not sure if we are coming back. We are surrounded by Muslims. We don't know, we wake up, we don't know what happens at the close of the day. So there are other Dominican groups in other parts of the world. In Pakistan, they have the same situation, who are suffering also. Maybe not as much as the Iraqi sisters are suffering, but we have difficulties. And if the Dominican youth can stay connected to these different groups, I think it would be a lot of encouragement for us, for the Iraqi sisters, for us in Nigeria, for the sisters in Pakistan, for every other group that I have not mentioned that is in need of this kind of support. I don't know if this helps.
I would just add that each youth program is treated as on its own. So you can contact like my community or myself if there are interests of groups that want to come to Iraq. But keep in mind that we have a problem with language, because when groups don't know Arabic or Aramaic, makes it hard for us to work with them, or for people to work with them.
Antes de una
one last question that they have asked this question through the internet, and Bruno would like to address this question.
I would like to reply with an appeal and to share with you a dream. In the coming 2 years, the Church will prepare a synod on youth, on the question of youth, young people, and the passing on of faith and vocations, discernment of vocations. My dream is that this question of the Church might permeate all our realities, that it would be the opportunity for real collaboration, so that young people in the Church or around the Church who are interested in the Church might see paths opening up before them, paths for speaking within the Church and talking about their situation, talking about the Church. I think that the Order of Preachers has a very important role, very specific one, to open up the possibility of speaking. And when I see the number of young people who meet our sisters, the number of young people in families that many people here look after, the number of people with whom the friars are in contact, and when I see, and excuse me, the questions or the problems faced by our bishops in their diocese, and with the movement, the youth movement as well, which could have a very specific role. If we could come to catalyse all of this, to make it such that the Order of Preachers, in its own way, might contribute to the speech, the giving of voice to the young people who are with us or work with us, the great number of people who will be involved with the Synod in 2 years, we would have done a great work. Before doing something for them, we must open up paths for them to be able to speak.
Brothers and sisters, we have been sent to preach the gospel. We have been invited to encounter each other in order to serve in love to that humanity to which God, our Lord, is sending us to preach. I want to thank to Bruno, to Luma, and Faustina for their cooperation today, and for all of you for your participation. May God bless you and thank you.
Antes de que se vaya.
Before you leave the hall, one announcement. All the facilitators and moderators, you have a meeting with Catherine here by the lectern. Please remember your headphones. Please remember your headphones. If you do not remember, you will pay a fine of 250 euros. We remind you that the pilgrimage, it's to the Minerva, sopra Minerva. It's to Maria sopra Minerva, Santa Maria sopra Minerva. That's where our pilgrimage today will be. After coffee, we will prepare for the pilgrimage, and please do not forget to return your headphones. God bless.
Sí.